gentlemen, and welcome back to the Darthmouth Steam Railway. This train will now be calling at Goodrington Sands, Churston, Greenway Halt and Kingswear for Dartmouth. Passengers for Dartmouth and those of you with round robin, steam and cruise or paddle steamer tickets, please change onto the ferry at Kingswear. For any passengers wishing to leave the train at Greenway Halt, could you please be travelling in coach D or H at the front of the train. And for those of you wishing to visit Greenway House using the shuttle bus, then please change onto the bus at Churston. Could all passengers please have their tickets ready for inspection? Thank you. We'll shortly be arriving at Kingswear. Kingswear for Dartmouth is our next stop. Passengers for Dartmouth and those of you with round robin, steam cruise or paddle steamer tickets, please change onto the ferry here at Kingswear. You'll find the ferry to Dartmouth at the far end of the platform, just beyond the station buildings. That is by walking along the platform in the direction we're presently travelling.
Thank you very much.
This train will return to Painston at 12:55. Following trains are at approximately 45-minute intervals, with the last train of the day being 5:15. If you are going over to Dartmouth and returning on a later train, we do recommend that you allow at least half an hour for the return ferry crossing in order to ensure you connect with the returning train of your choice. If you're leaving us here, will you please check that you have all of your luggage and belongings with you? For safety, please keep the doors closed until the train has come to a complete stop on the platform, and please mind the gap as you leave the train. For anyone having difficulty leaving the train, please use the doors at the ends of the coaches where the gap onto the platform is less. On Kingswear Station, you will find the Bell Bistro, able to serve you with hot and cold drinks and snacks. We'd like to thank you for travelling with us on the Dartmouth Steam Railway and hope you've enjoyed your journey. We're now arriving at Kingswear, change here for Dartmouth.
Come on, the blue. Come on, hurry up.
One guy just comes through, destroys the rest of them.
I'll tell you what, it's hard on that current as well.
Oh yeah.
And the wind. It's harder than the blast. That's one thing. Oh, you see the puff of smoke?
Yeah.
Alright, what's that?
Shooting cannons at them. What's a song befitting this?
What should we do with a drunken thing?
It's good, isn't it? Was, yeah. It's a nice place. It reminds me of Northumberland, doesn't it?
Well, very good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and dogs. We're aboard paddle steamer Kingswear Castle for our cruise on the River Dart today. Now, before we go any further in the trip, I do have to give you a brief safety announcement. It's very simple. It's only that the vessel is fully equipped with all of the necessary life-saving apparatus. Life rafts, life rings and life jackets are spread evenly around this boat, very clearly marked, and in the event of an emergency you'll be told by us whether it's necessary to use the safety equipment. Now, we have a full saloon bar aboard the boat if you fancy a drink or a snack. The bar's found down the large hatchway out on the bow deck. The bar will be open in a few minutes' time, and it's down in the bar you can get tea, coffee, hot chocolate, some soft drinks, some alcoholic drinks and light snacks, and some souvenirs are also available. You're more than welcome to take your drinks away from the bar, but if you do, please return your cups and glasses when finished with them. It's also down in the bar area of the boat you'll find the toilets if you need to use them. The toilets come in the form of two galvanised buckets. Obviously the pink bucket is for the ladies.
That's what he's on about.
Now if you have any questions during the trip, don't be afraid to speak to a member of the crew. Myself, Richie, I'm your skipper. I'll be up here in the wheelhouse. Stuart and Jamie and the crew, they'll be on the boat somewhere. And Dan's our engineer today. Now Dan will be down in a hot engine room shoveling coal and oiling the old engine. And you can see down into the engine room through some viewing hatches. One's in front of the wheelhouse, you can look down upon our 115-year-old engine in motion. There's 2 doorways each side of the wheelhouse. You can look down, see the boiler, and watch Dan shoveling in the coal. During the trip today, I'm going to point out a few places of interest, hopefully some wildlife, and tell you a little bit about this lovely boat that you're sat on. The trip will last for just under an hour, and we're going to head downriver first, and out towards the sea. The sea out there ahead of us is the English Channel, and today the English Channel's classified as the busiest waterway in the whole of the world. We often see very large ships crossing our horizon, although the shipping lanes are much closer to the French side. The French coast, around 70 miles straight ahead of us there. Standing here in the river entrance. The castle we see here today is the 3rd and smallest castle to have been built on this site. This one was built here in 1480, and today it's owned by English Heritage. In turn, it's opened up to the public, and it's an interesting place to come to. They often fire off the old replica cannon from the battlements, and sometimes do Elizabethan reenactments in the castle grounds. This time of the year, you sometimes see pirates running around the battlements as well. Behind the castle is the Church of St Petrox, a 12th century church named after the old Cornish saint, but only open these days for the occasional evensong and summer wedding. As you can imagine though, a lovely setting for your summer wedding on a nice summer's day. The entrance to this river is narrow, as you can see, so if you do get a strong wind and tide, it does whip the waves up very nicely. As we're turning, you'll see there is another castle standing in the river entrance. That's the Kingswear Castle, and that's where this vessel takes its name from. Kingswear Castle was built there in 1501, and today it's owned by the Landmark Trust. This is a company that buys up old stately homes and castles, and then converts them into holiday homes. It helps to pay for their upkeep. These old buildings are very expensive to upkeep, so if you fancy playing King and Queen for a week, there's your castle. Residential properties. One of my favourite houses on the river is the one we're passing directly on the right of the boat now. It's the house down here at the water's edge. It's kind of been built into the cliff or the rocks, and it looks like it's been there for many years. The house though is brand new, and the house itself has no road access to it. It can only be reached by boat, or by scrambling down the cliff face above. You'll notice they've rigged up a long scaffolding lift service from the house, up through the trees, to the actual road above. And that's so they can bring the building materials down during the building of the house. It has though been very slow going for this guy, having no real road access to his property. It's taken him a number of years to get to that. But what a fantastic job he's made. It's almost like the house has grown out of the rocks. Much like Darthmouth on the left, that's the more expensive part of Kingswear on the right. It's because the houses have the river frontage and all important sea view. They really can command very, very high prices. You'll do very well to find a house for sale for less than £1 million these days. It is a lot of fun, I think, though, to pick out your favourite house, the one that you'd like to buy if you were lucky enough to win the lottery. The one thing you will notice when you look into Kingswear on the right and Dartmouth on the left is that there's lots of building work going on. Now, people are always modernising and enlarging their houses in different ways. There's always something going on here. It really does keep the local builders in plenty of business. And I'm starting to think that I'm in the wrong job.
Those houses are really like it, really. Yeah.
Like a wild black one there. Wait, what's now? I don't know, you had to pay what time you got back. Can't do it. Spend the rest of the day.
It's called Bayard's Cove, and at the start of Bayard's Cove is Bayard's Castle, this small stone fortification. It was built there in the early 1500s, and it would have acted as the last form of defence for Dartmouth against ships had snuck past the cannons back at Dartmouth and Kingsway castles, they'd been picked off by the cannons used there at Bayard's Castle. The cannons they used here were known as murdering pieces, and you can see the old gunning placements at the base of the castle still today. Now the front row of houses along Bayards are old custom houses. They were built in the early 1700s. The largest house at Bayards has 1739 written above its white front door. You can just about see that from here. In front of the house is a very old cobbled street, again laid down in the early 1500s, still the original today. Bayards is always a lovely peaceful part of Dartmouth to go and visit, especially when it's very busy like this during Dartmouth's regatta.
We reckon 1930s or 1920s. Oh, they're in London.
Oh, really?
It says on the life raft.
Ah. It's going to run into us.
Well, as we head up through the harbour here in Dartmouth and up past the rowing races that are taking place today, coming into view on top of the hill to the left is a large red and grey bricked building. It kind of stands guard over the town of Dartmouth, and it's the Britannia Royal Naval College. The Naval College was built there in 1902. The foundation stone was laid by King Edward VII. Today the Naval College copes with around 500 cadets at any one time, and these cadets come from all over the world for their training. They don't just come from the British Navy. All the cadets are of an officer class, and we often see them on the river in their training vessels. And many of the elder male members of the royal family have also trained in this Naval College over the years. It was 12 years ago that Prince William also came here for his training course. And it's also at the Naval College our present Queen met her husband for the very first time. She came here in 1939 with her mum to oversee a passing out parade. Prince Philip was there doing his training, and he was assigned to be her official escort. She was only a 13-year-old princess at the time. The ferry ran on this river for just over 50 years. They even worked out the old ferry had done just over 1.5 million crossings of the river in its lifetime. Now, just like the old ferry, that new one there has no steering of its own. It can only go backwards and forwards. It can't turn left or right, and it's guided across the river by steel cables. The ferry is technically known as a floating bridge because of this, and even classified as a road on some of the older sat-navs in your car, which is typical. But something to be aware of if you come racing down to the slipway on a dark winter's night. This road goes home at 11 o'clock and doesn't return until 7 o'clock the following morning. If you ever find yourself in that position, you then have to drive the 25-mile trip round to reach the shore on the other side of the river. And whilst you're doing that, you can practice all the swear words you've ever learned. Yard or naval base called Sand Key. Sand Key does act as the cadets' water-based headquarters. The cadets on the college moor their training vessels here. The cadets also use the grey warship that's tied up on the inside of the jetty, and that's a decommissioned mine hunter called the Hindustan. Today the Hindustan's a floating classroom. It gives these cadets the feel of a modern-day warship without ever taking one out to sea. The Hindustan's a permanent fixture these days. Now it looks very quiet here today. The cadets are not using their training boats. They're all away on summer leave. And that's a bit of a shame because when we pass them, it's a great opportunity for all the ladies aboard this boat to wave and shout, "Hello, sailor." Now, Philip and Son started its life back in 1858. Over the years, they've built and repaired many vessels here, and a lot of their works were done during the war efforts. They built around 400 boats for the Admiralty during these war times, and at one stage employed 800 people to work at the yard. They also built the boat that you're all sitting on today, paddle steamer Kingswood Castle, built there in 1924. I'll tell you more about that a bit later on. Unfortunately, Philip and Son was closed down a few years ago. Recently, they managed to get hold of planning permission to build a large holiday complex on the site. They have been busy over the last few months knocking some of the old boat building sheds down. They're soon going to build a big 5-star hotel some luxury apartments and some housing, amongst other things. They have said, though, that some of the housing they're building on the site will be affordable housing for locals only, which is wonderful news. Affordable housing in the area is really hard to come by, so everybody in Dartmouth especially is very excited about this. Although the excitement's been a bit short-lived. We've recently read in the local paper that the affordable housing will actually start at £750,000. So, not very affordable. Never mind. Now, they do have 28 acres of land to build on. It's not a small site, and it will be a shame to see this yard go with all of its history. But building this new holiday complex will in turn create lots of jobs for the area, so I guess that's good news. Summer. Not really hard to see why. All the trees that grow in this wood are sessile oak trees, and it's one of the two native oaks to the British Isles, otherwise known as the dwarf or stunted oak. Most of the trees that grow along the banks of this river are these sessile oaks.
Oh wow.
They're very important to the river because they gave the river its name many years ago. The old Celtic word for oak was dart, so we're paddling up the river of many oak trees.
You can see the willows from the rocks, and you see the roots.
Yeah.
That was a person.
Here for a number of years, but when the new owner purchased the old house, he realised the bottom floor had become very badly damaged with damp. Being close to the edge of the river, especially at high tides, that's hardly surprising, I guess, and it was apparently beyond renovation, so he knocked it down and built this more modern property in its place. And what a lovely job he's made. Now, he's made the roof of his house entirely out of copper. Eventually the copper will tarnish to a green colour and help the house blend a little better with its surroundings. The bottom floor of the house is not lived in this time, quite wisely. He has turned the bottom floor into a big indoor swimming pool, sauna, jacuzzi and wet bar. Now, I'm not really sure what a wet bar is, but it sounds lovely. I think that I want one as well. The best bit about the story is, though, the guy who built the house doesn't even live in it. He just lives in the house behind. And he actually built this house as a present for his daughter and her family to live in. And that is absolutely true. What a lovely present. What a lovely dad. My sister's very lucky. It's called the Greenway Estate. Now, the Greenway Estate was purchased by the late Dame Agatha Christie in 1938. She only paid £6,000 for this 280-acre estate. Incredible. And nowadays, of course, it's worth millions. But it's whilst living on the estate, Agatha Christie gained a lot of the inspiration for the writing of her plays and novels. Many of these were based on this river and the surrounding area. Nowadays, the National Trust own the estate, and of course they open it all up to the public. An interesting place to come to. And this boat in, as this boat has a very large turn-in circle. The reason for this boat's large turn-in circle is that you cannot move one of the paddle wheels forward, whilst moving the other paddle wheel backward to help you turn. The paddle wheels of this boat are fixed together, so they both go the same way at the same time, so turning the boat is a bit tricky. There's a much better view of that lovely house there on the left. But more importantly, behind it, up through the trees, we see the Greenway Viaduct. Now, that stone viaduct was designed and engineered by Isambard Kingdom Brunel back in the 1850s. It was originally built to carry the line of the Great Western Railway down from Paddington Station in London, through the West Country, and on to the village of Kingswear ahead of us. When Brunel built the viaduct there, though, he wanted to build it across the river at this point, and then run his train track down into Dartmouth. At the time, there was very fierce local opposition to his plans by the local landowners. They didn't want to sell him their land, so a special Act of Parliament was introduced to stop Brunel from building a bridge across this river. Brunel, though, was so sure that he'd get permission for his viaduct that he went ahead and built a train station down in Dartmouth before he got permission. Or didn't, as it turned out. Now, this train station still stands in Dartmouth today as the only train station in the country never to have, or ever to will have, track or train run to or from it. The building's still painted in the old Great Western colours of chocolate and cream, and today the building's known as Platform 1. In fact, you'll all walk past it when you get off the boat a bit later on. When you look over to the left. Now this is the high tide mark. This is where the water gets to at the high tide. The reason for the straight line in the trees and nothing growing beneath is that salt water is really, really poisonous to any living vegetation. Anything that's dipped or dangled into salt water for any length of time will eventually rot, wither, and then drop off. And that's why you won't catch any male members of the crew swimming in the river, just in case. Flora, sorry. And she is the most modern boat in our fleet, built back in the 90s, although driven by the shortest skipper in our fleet, which is Stumpy Steve. To see over the wheel of his boat, Steve has to stand on a beer crate and all 3 copies of 50 Shades of Grey. Give him and his passengers a wave as they pass them. Now this boat ran on this river from 1924 right up until 1965, doing a similar trip to us today. But in 1965, the owners of the boat then withdrew her from service. At that time, steam engines were being phased out in favour of the modern diesel engine. So this boat was then laid up for a few years doing nothing. She was then saved from the scrap heap, really, by the Paddle Steamer Preservation Society. They only paid £600 for the boat, and they took it from here to the River Medway up in Kent. Now it's up on the Medway they gave this boat a very lengthy and extensive refit, restoring the boat back to its former glory, and then doing trips with her on the Medway. She ran there until 2012. It was then that this company stepped in and brought the boat back here to its home river, and back really where the boat belonged, I think. Now the engine that powers the boat along is older than the boat. The engine was built in 1904 by Cox & Co. down in Falmouth. The engine was built for the first Kingswood Castle, which was a paddle steamer of similar design to this. It ran on the river doing trips until the outbreak of the First World War. When that war finished, the first Kingswood Castle never came back into service. Her owners removed her engine, then towed her up the river, and literally left her to rot away on a mudbank. A couple of years later, though, they did build this boat to replace her. They then placed the original engine into this boat. And that's the engine that you see working away down the viewing hatch in front of the wheelhouse there. That engine, 115 years old this year, still going strong. Now the Kingswood Castle that you're all sitting on today is Britain's last remaining coal-fired paddle steamer, and we burn half a ton of coal every single day. You will see the River Dart's most exotic piece of wildlife. There is a life-size silver giraffe just staring back at you. It's not something you see every day, and you might be wondering why is there a silver giraffe standing up in that garden. Well, that's exactly what I wonder every time we pass. There are some stories flying around though as to why the giraffe is there. 1, it's simply an art installation. 2, the gentleman who owns the house next to it was given the giraffe after making a large cash donation to Colchester Zoo. And the third story, which is definitely my favourite, that is what the gentleman spent the settlement money on from his divorce. And the giraffe now stares directly at his ex-wife's house. Now that is the S-160 pulling down the carriages. Now that's an American engine. It was built in America and then shipped to England during the Second World War to carry troops around the country during that wartime. And the carriages of the train still painted in the old Great Western colours of chocolate and cream. The last carriage is the Devon Bell Observer car. Nice glass carriage. And that's a Pullman glass carriage, one of only 2 in the whole country. Very lovely scenic trip to do on the painted to Kingsway steam train there. I can highly recommend going on it if you haven't yet done so.
Come on, look, I'm going to gloss through Warwick.
Now we do have Darthmouth car ferry at the slipway on the right hand side, just busy loading its cargo of cars. Well, I was kind of hoping we'd see it crossing the river in front of us. You always get a better view of the steel cables that guide it across. Now these steel cables lay down on the riverbed. They're fixed at the top of the slipways. When the ferry ferry moves, it picks them up at the front, passes them inside through a slave and pulley system, and then drops the cables quickly off behind again, back to the riverbed. If you look carefully at the front of the ferry, you can just see the cables stretching from it down into the water. Now you might be looking at those cables and wondering if they've ever snapped. Well, they haven't with this new ferry, but they did several times with the old paddle-driven ferry that I told you about earlier. Most notably, it was 15 years ago in a really bad storm. The ferry came halfway across the river, fully laden with cars, and the cables snapped due to the strong wind. The ferry then drifted quickly towards these boats on our left-hand side. Now, of course, that ferry had no steering at all, so it was in a spot of bother. But thankfully, there was a quick-thinking young deckhand aboard that day. He quickly chucked the anchor over the side of the ferry. Very quick thinking. Perhaps a little too quick, though. He hadn't checked to see if the anchor was actually attached to the ferry. It wasn't. The anchor just fell straight to the riverbed. The ferry ploughed down through those boats and caused quite a few pounds worth of damage. It even made national news. Dartmouth being a small town, word spread quickly, and that young deckhand found it difficult to get a job thereafter. But thankfully, this company felt sorry for me and gave me a job talking to you today.
So was him.
We'll shortly be arriving at Greenway Halt. Any passengers wishing to leave the train at Greenway Halt need to do so from coach D or H at the back of the train. We will shortly be arriving at Gudrington Sands. If you are leaving the train here at Gudrington Sands, please be aware of the narrow platform and remain behind the yellow line whilst leaving the station.
Yeah. Stop it. I know, I will.
We're just pausing here to lower the barriers at the Sands Road level crossing. This is not Fleet Station Street. We will shortly be arriving at Painted Queen's Park as our next and final stop.
Flipping off.